Hello, welcome to week 5 of Go Ask Gabby. Thanks for submitting all your questions. Please keep those coming. Today's question, the question for this week, I picked because the week's topic, if you've been following along on social media or our email list this week, is how to keep the fights clean as it starts. So we're looking each week, one week how to keep the fights clean, one week how to keep the sex dirty, and looking, of course, timing is everything. So what do you do before? What do you do as it starts? What do you do in the heat of it? And what do you do afterwards? So this week, it's all about the on-ramps. So I pulled out this question that, boy, my husband and I, we so dealt with this. See if this is familiar at all for you, if this has ever happened. I feel like both my husband and I are annoyed and irritated by each other a lot. We seem to both have short fuses these days, and it can quickly turn into a full blowout. The little things aren't so little right now. How can we stop being so annoyed and get on the same team again? I so hear you on that one. Okay, so first of all, we mentioned this topic today of fights clean as it starts. It's all about catch it early, right? You don't want to wait till you're in a full blowout. Now, obviously, the before is even more important. Oh, we got some wind here, which is fun. I'm going to pause for a moment and show you. I chose this little spot. I don't know if you can see here, but the rose petals from the bush up above me, they're kind of heart-shaped. Super cute, right? So a little wind blowing up there. If it looks like it's snowing white hearts, it's because it kind of is. Okay, back to the question here. So catch it early, right? We want to build even before the on-ramps, encourage you to look at the tips and the topics that we have for Fights Clean before, so that you're building a couple culture, weaving what I like to call the trampoline of transformation, right? That you just can throw you up to new levels in your relationship. Okay, so second, I have a blog you may want to check out. It's called, if you just go to the blogs on forbetter.love and search friction factors. There's a blog that talks about shifting friction factors into peace practices. So taking and really making a list, what are the things that cause the most tension? For my husband and I, there were things like packing the car was a big one. You know, these are the little things that cause the irritation all the time. How the bed was made. He wanted me to make it a certain way. He was pretty particular. I thought he should make it if he wanted it made so badly that way. So you just want to look in your life and see, where are the friction factors? What are the things that trip you up? Being late, it's often a common one. And they might be some bigger things, but these are often, you'll see, or I've seen in research, that it's not often the big things that break a couple up. It's the day-to-day little things, the way they treat each other, the way they talk to each other, until one day, like a light switch, it's just over. So we like to play games around here, good games, not the bad games. Not like, stop playing games, but like, hey, want to play a game? And that game is, write a list of what your most common friction factors are, and then see how you can turn them into peace practices, or go and look at that blog that I mentioned on forbetter.love and take some of the peace practices from there. We actually take some common friction factors and translate them into peace practices. So you have habits that are proactively, or even at breaking up a pattern. If you're going into the friction factor, some of these peace practices can just be a game for you, can stop right in that moment. Your habits, your relationship happiness is absolutely going to be determined by your relationship habits. Habits equals happiness. So your habits are going to be determining how healthy, happy, and hot your relationship is. Do you have a date night? Do you have proactive habits in advance? Do you have a habit to stop an argument when the argument is about to start? So it's just a reminder that, when your beloved is not doing well, is having a tough time, maybe it's external circumstances, maybe it's a physical well-being thing, maybe they haven't eaten, and maybe they're a little cranky and they start taking it out on you. Most often, we take the bait and we start snapping back, right? Don't take that tone with me. But that's not very helpful. My husband's just walking by in his flip-flops, trying to go as quietly as he can. So back to, do you need some loving? That's what we'll say, is because there's a great quote that I love. I think it's a proverb. I don't think it's attributed to anybody in particular, that says something like, People need your love the most when they deserve it the least, especially your beloved. And if you're having a tough time and you snap at them, you don't want them to snap back at you. You hopefully that they would have some kind of compassion for you, know how to help soothe you, know to give you some space, but that you can give each other some freedom that sometimes you're not in such a good place. And your beloved then, or you can say to your beloved, do you need some loving instead of don't take that tone with me? So that's one game you can play. Build your habits, turn your friction factors into peace practices. And one of those habits might be the game of do you need some loving? Accountability. Make a commitment to check in weekly with a friend or a coach. It might even be daily, weekly, monthly, depends. But if you want to decrease the amount of irritation in your relationship, it's usually going to come from an internal source. You can't change your beloved. So, yes, there's tips and strategies for inspiring and motivating them. And we've got 90-day games for couples to set goals together and make them a reality. But ultimately, accountability is a personal thing, and autonomy is required for true personal development. So, you want to look to yourself, make a commitment. What are you going to do? And if you find yourself slipping into some irritated mode, can you text a friend or can you have a little theme song that you sing? There's another little game. As far as goals, one year, because I did this a lot with Raj. I don't do it as much hardly anymore, but I used to do this a lot. I still do it sometimes. When I'm under resourced, just get irritated and take my stress out on him. And so we really, I took on for a year on looking at irritation, being responsible for irritation, not saying it's them doing this, but it's just low grade anger and it's just too easy to access. And I wanted to have compassion and patience be more of the couple culture between my husband and myself. So make a declaration, make a commitment, and then check in weekly. Be specific. We talk about goals and making them smarty, right? You may have heard of SMART goals, maybe not. That's a pretty popular goal practice out there. Don't know who it's attributed to. I've looked and researched, can't find it. Oop, one got me. Mosquito. But setting goals and making a commitment with your friends, yourself, a coach, declare what you're going to do, and then play a game to make it a reality. Okay, a couple other tips I wrote down here, and I think all of these have their own 3 of these have their own blog written for them, so you can dive in deeper if you like. These are just giving you a whole bunch of ideas and tips. Sorry for the clapping. It's mosquito central here. Stop Shift Starts. That is the first tool that Raj and I ever came up with years and years and years ago, over a decade ago now, before we were doing relationship education with couples. And Stop Shift Start is something is starting to brew. You can use this in the middle of an argument, but as if you start, one says something snippy and the other says something stippy, and you're taking the bait and you're off to the races, one of you can just say, I call Stop Shift Start. And that's shorthand for, wow, this dynamic between us is not who we say we are. Hopefully you have a shared relationship vision, or as we call it, a marriage mantra. You can find those on our website and create one, do it yourself or in a course or with coaching or a few options in between. But create a vision for yourself. So then when you say stop, shift, start, you know what you want to go back to. You want to shift to who we say we are. This dynamic of nitpicking and the little subtle digs or overt digs at each other, that's not who we are. The lack of compassion, the being short with each other, that's not who we want to be. And so you call stop, shift, start, and where you stop what you're doing, shift into what you declared, and start being who you said you wanted to be. Okay. And if you don't have a vision, just shift into something empowered and empowering that you create right then and there. Let's see. Let me squeeze in these last two. Great minds think alike. Oh, has this been a game changer for Raj and I? Woo, this is a good one. This has been around for 7 years or so. Great minds think alike. So Raj may be going to do something and I don't see that he's doing it. And I might say to him, hey, I'll just take something, a benign example like, hey, are you going to take the trash out? And he might come over and say, I was just about to, right? Normally he's like, get off my back. I was just about to. That's so like 2012 for us. Now he'd just look at me and smile and say, great minds think alike. And it's his way of saying, I got it, babe. I was on it, totally on it. Thanks for the reminder, but I got you. Instead of using this as an opportunity to get upset with each other. So let's make sure that we're being helpful in our relationship. We are human. But we just don't want to rest on that and say, oh, I'm just being human. We want to cultivate an actual helpful dynamic in our relationship and then appreciate our beloved's patience and show patience to our beloved when we find ourselves in, like a bug on our back with our legs flailing in our humanity, right? Humanity can be a beautiful thing. Empathy is very human, but sometimes the humanness looks much more like reaction and irritation and blame and projection. So we have to cultivate these habits and play these games for a intentional, proactive, purposeful dynamic between you and your beloved. It's not going to happen on its own. And if it does, then great. We want to interview you. There's some great couples out there that say we never fight. But usually when I talk to them and ask a few more questions, oh, well, we do that. We don't fight, but we do that. At any rate, the whole point is that you're here watching this now because you're leaning into loving better. You're not satisfied with just figuring out where your beloved is to blame, but you're looking for how can I inspire and motivate change. And of course, even better, if you're here with your beloved watching this together, bravo for the two of you. Sometimes it's not easy to get the two of you together on the same page for those things, but just remember it may take two to tango, but it really does only change one person to change a habit and to change a dynamic. Just remember that we're not the same people. You might want to go back and look at the blog on differentiation recently. It's another way to lower your irritation is understand how you and your beloved think and share and talk about those things. We wrote a blog last week on differentiation, so you can go and check that one out. And last but not least, one of our earliest tips and one of my favorites. These days, I've been telling people if you go for only one tip, use the ownership, compassion, and creativity tip. But the drama-free diet was the predecessor to that one. And the drama-free diet takes research from John Gottman and from Harville Hendricks and Helen Hunt. And Harville Hendricks and Helen Hunt wrote a great book called Making Marriage Simple. And essentially, the beginning of the book talks about how it's not the big things, it's the little things, and it's the negativity essentially that's going to doom a marriage. So that's the blaming, shaming, complaining, and criticizing. You want to not do that. And then John Gottman says that you want to have, for a healthy relationship, you want to have a 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative statements. Okay, I'll wrap this one up. So the drama-free diet, you've got your magic ratio 5-to-1. So Raj, came in. I said, how am I supposed to cook dinner? The trash is full. We open up he takes the trash out, kind of grumbling, and he says, can I get a magic ratio? I was like, yes, yes. I actually think at that time he didn't even ask for it, which is better. He just kind of looked at me and let the poop stink. I was like, okay, magic ratio. First of all, I never have to take the trash out. It's your job. So thanks for that, because I don't like taking the trash out. Second of all, the trash is almost always taken out and I rarely have to ask you. So thank you for that. Third, you're just a really great, you keep the house clean and beautiful. You're my partner in that. Fourth, you're just a great partner in life. Now, notice I've just started from the specific and gone more and more and more general. And John Gottman's research has shown that if you say 3 things, positive things after 1 negative, you'll get back into the neutral territory. But if you go as far and say 5, then you'll actually have even more connection than you had before you started. But the recommendations on what to do here, if you have a short fuse, is first of all, catch it early. Second of all, take ownership, right? Practice the OCC, ownership, compassion, creativity. List your friction factors and turn them into peace practices. Start cultivating habits and playing games, such as, do you need some loving? Make a commitment and a declaration, take accountability and get a buddy, check in weekly or daily with a friend or a coach or another couple. Play that stop, shift, start, where something starting, you're like, oh, let's shift into who we really say we are. The great minds think alike to make sure, hey, we're on the same page. And the drama-free diet. And there goes the mower again. Thanks everybody for being here, for leaning into loving better. Keep sending in your questions at the URL that is in the comments below. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.